Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's good to see you all. I won't even make you repeat that because that was nice and strong. Welcome today, not only to a regular History 102 class, but History 383, Women in Jewish History that's visiting. We have a few other guests today, in addition to our friends from media production who are filming this, so that we'll always have Rose's testimony. We have my mother, Harriet Sepinwall, who'll be walking down the hall with Rose's son, Steve Schindler, and my mom's husband, Jeff, and you can wave to my son, Jacob, who is being homeschooled today here in History 102. So again, it's really a privilege for us to welcome Rose Schindler. I told you last Wednesday why it's so important for us, even as we race through 500 years of history, to spend some extra time on this subject. Certainly the Holocaust reminds us that technology does not always only make the world better, it can make it much worse, and it also reminds us of the danger of prejudice and stereotyping. I want to add one more thing about why it's so important to hear from survivors while we can, instead of just reading history books. When we study history and we read numbers about the past, whether it's the millions who died in the slave trade or in World War I, it's easy to lose sight of individuals. Numbers can be abstract and staggering. And this is certainly true of the Holocaust too. 6 million people is a number too big really for us to grasp. And most of the time when we're trying to understand what this meant for individual people, we only have written documents. And one day that's going to be true for the Holocaust too. But while we have witnesses and survivors, it's so important that we hear from them. So Rose is just one person. Here they come. And her story is only one story. Good morning, Steve, and good morning, Mom. But each person affected by the Holocaust was a human being with a father and mother, siblings, and sometimes children. So Rose's story can help us realize that each of those 6 million people was one person. So this is really 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. You have to keep multiplying that. Remember that you're also having an opportunity that many people will not be able to have in 10 years. Although we'll be able to have this on film, it won't be the same. So please remember that you are bearing witness to what you hear today, and you'll be able to tell people decades from now that you heard Rose. So Rose is really an amazing person. She's president of the New Life Club in San Diego for survivors. She was born in 1929. She was 14 when she got to Auschwitz. And I'll let her tell you more about her experiences. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction.
Just a reminder, so we have in this room until 12:20, and then if you're coming to the Q&A, we are down the hallway. The TAs can check from you which room I said on the syllabus that I reserved. We'll tell you at the end. Okay. Right.
Okay, thanks. It's all mine, right? Okay.
All yours.
All mine.
Again,
Again, thank you very much to all of you. And I just want to tell you, guys, you are the future generation. You are our future. So whatever you hear today, please tell your friends, your families what you heard, okay? Because a lot of us survivors are dwindling right now. So as you were told, I'm born in Czechoslovakia in 1929. Come from a family of 8 children. We are very Orthodox. You know what Orthodox means? Strictly Jewish. I mean, you know, in the Jewish, we have Reformed, we have Conservative, and we have Orthodox. So in Europe, I think most of the Jews were strictly Orthodox, okay? So like here, you have 3 different temples. If you don't believe in one, you go to the other anyway. So we actually went according to the Bible exactly. There was no cuts or anything, okay? So we lived in a house with 3 rooms. We had no electricity and we had no indoor plumbing. We lived on a farm. It's not only that we lived on the farm, we lived off the farm, okay? Everything we ate came from the farm. If we didn't have it on the farm, we didn't eat it. We had no stores. If we did have a store, it was something that we couldn't grow or something that we couldn't make, okay? So the community in my hometown was about, I would say 1,500 to 1,800 people. I'm really not exactly sure how many. And the Jewish people were a third of the community. And most of the men in our community were tradespeople. okay? We had no schooling over middle school, okay? If anybody wanted to go get higher education, they would have to go, I was born in Serenya. I know it's being taped, so I should really be, tell you where I come from. Serenya, it means middle. And we had big cities on either side of us, Munkac and Ungvar, okay? And each city of Munkac, they had about 25,000 people. And if you wanted to go from Munkac to Ungvar, you had to go through Serenya. That was the only road, okay? And it was not really a road, probably mostly dirt and stuff. No cemented roads in those days, okay? So, as I said, we got along very well with all our neighbors, by the way. And all the Jewish men in our town, the fathers and the younger men, and they go to school till they're 13, and then after that, what do? They go and they are interns. My father was a tailor, by the way. He had a shop, and he would have interns every year. And once they are interns, maybe for 3-4 years, then they go and open up their own shops. That's how it works. So anyway, so things were very simple. But let me tell you, before the war, it was a wonderful life under the Czech government. The Jewish people had the same rights. We had the same rights to own properties, homes, businesses, anything. So in 1938, half a dozen Hungarian soldiers come in on bicycles. Remember, we had no cars in those days over there. I don't know if they had cars anywhere else, on bicycles, and everything is beginning to change. New rules in the whole town. Within 3-4 months, all the Jewish kids were told they cannot go to school anymore. So I went to school till I was 9 years old in 1938, okay? And all the Jewish businesses were taken away. And not that the non-Jewish people could run those businesses, because they really did not have those professions. So a lot of those places were closed, and that's it. So, and little by little, they are taking a lot of men from our town on trucks to take for slave labor. All the boys over 15, they were taken for road work, forests. We have a lot of forests in Europe, by the way, a lot of forests. So that's what the men did. The mothers and the children were left alone, thank God. They didn't touch us till 1944. And Hungary was in there in 1938, the end of 1938. So anyway, things are not the same as they were before. You see, before all the Jewish men in our town were actually running the town, because they were all tradespeople. And the non-Jewish people were mostly farm workers, farmers, okay? So all of a sudden, all the businesses were gone, so if anybody needed things done, they had to go out of town, because my father was a tailor, we had shoemakers, cabinet makers, everything you needed, we were there. We did not need to leave our town to get anything done. And if we didn't have it available, we didn't need it. We went without it, okay? And that is with food and everything else too, clothing. I never had a bought dress. It was always homemade, everything. So anyway, as the Germans marched in, things are changing, and all of a sudden, all our friends from our neighbors, we were friends with our neighbors' kids. All of a sudden, they start throwing rocks at us, and they start calling us dirty Jew. So we had to be very careful what we would say, because we didn't want any trouble, because we don't have the rights anymore, okay? We don't have the rights. They have the rights. So it wasn't easy, but we were there, and we were glad that we were not taken away. But in 1944, some SS soldiers march in, and this was just, I would say, 3-4 weeks before Passover. I don't know if we have any Jewish kids here. You know what Passover is? If you have Easter, we have Passover. We have Hanukkah, you have Christmas. I think you copied all our religions, or our fun days. Anyway, I'm just kidding, all right? So anyway, so here we are, and these soldiers march in, and of course the Jewish girls, some of the adult Jewish girls, they are very worried, because, the German soldiers, they're afraid they're going to be molested. So the Jewish girls, the ones that were, over 18 or whatever, they would go into the forest at night and hide, because they were afraid of that. There must have been at least a half a dozen SS soldiers. So things are quiet, and we have to be very careful. And here is Passover, okay? And during Passover, we don't eat bread. You know that. You know why we don't eat bread during Passover? Is because, you know, when the people in Egypt left Egypt, when they were freed, they were always on the go. They never had enough time to really bake bread. I don't know if anybody ever baked a bread over here, but you know, when you bake a bread, it takes hours and hours. You have to put the yeast into the dough, and then you have to let it rise. I would say 3 hours or whatever. So, of course, we did have a bakery in our town, so my mother told me, go to the bakery and get a loaf of bread, okay? So as I'm going to the bakery, there's a man, you know, in Europe, all those towns have farmers markets. Because when we would have extra stuff, we would go to the farmers market and we would barter. There was never any money exchanged, okay? Say we had a lot of chickens and geese and ducks and all that stuff. We would go there and cows. We would just change, you know. If we had too much, we would get something that we don't have. So, and also, we never had newspapers in our town anyway, okay? Of course we don't. It's during the war. Who can have newspapers? A lot of the papers were canceled all over Europe because they didn't want people to know the news. And also no radios. I don't think too many of us had radios in those days. Maybe 2 families in our town may have had a radio, but that was against the law also. So we really didn't know what was going on for over 4 years, okay? So, so anyway, here's Passover, so I'm going to get a bread to the bakery, and this man, we need someone to announce the news, what's going on in our town. So there was one man who had a drum, and he would go to the farmer's market, which is middle of the town, and use a drum. And we would hear it from the whole town, because it was a small town. And so we would come and listen to what's going on. And this man is announcing that all the Jewish people have to go to the school. They're all entitled to take, every person is entitled to take 1 bag or a suitcase. Of course, we had no suitcases because we never really traveled, okay? So, I'm listening to what he's saying, and then I go get the bread, and then I go home, and my mother, I'm telling my mother what I heard. She says, we know all the news already. You know, bad news travels very fast. They already knew everything what's going on. So my mother said, we need to start packing because we'll probably be going away either today or tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure. And she said to me, and to us kids, put on a couple of dresses and a couple sets of underwears because we don't know where we're going and we're going to have a chance of doing laundry, okay? And you know, my mother used to do the laundry in the river. Remember, we had no water in the house, okay? Just a pump or a well, okay? Anyway, so we put on a couple of dresses, a couple sets of underwears, and this is April 1944. And in Europe at this time it's very cold. Well, it's actually not as cold as a couple of months before, because the snow comes in around September and doesn't leave before maybe May or something like that. We have the snow there for about 5-6 months. So anyway, so we get everything together and we're ready to go. We go to the school and they take our names. And before we left for the school, they told us if anybody has any valuables or money and stuff like that, they should bring it to the school and they're going to give it back to us when we come back. You know what BS means, right? So I think our fathers already knew about a lot of things. That me as a 14-year-old, you know, in those days a 14-year-old acted like a 14-year-old. Today 14-year-olds are like 18-year-olds compared to so many years ago. We were very ignorant, okay? So my father put a few pieces of jewelry together. We didn't have much jewelry. I mean, it's not like what's going on here in this world, right? So, but my father had a pocket watch and a wedding band. My mother had a ring, a wedding band, a chain, a necklace, and earrings, and I don't think we had anything else, maybe a couple other pieces. So I am wearing a chain on my neck. This is from my father's pocket watch. Okay? I think that's what keeps me going. I put this on the minute I get out of bed. This is the first thing that goes on my body. Okay? So anyway, so he put a few pieces of jewelry together in the shoe polish box, and he told my two sisters and me, I had two older sisters and an older brother, and then I had 3 younger sisters and a younger brother. They were under 12. So he said to my two sisters and me, I put a few pieces of jewelry together. I want you to come with me. I want to hide it. I want you to know where it is. So when you come back from the war, you'll know where it is. So my father already had a slight idea what's happening a little bit in the world, okay? So my two sisters didn't want any part of it. So I said, Dad, I'm going to go with you, okay? So I went with him, and we hid the box between the ceiling and the wall. There must have been an opening there, and we just put some dirt over it, and so nobody should notice it. And so after we came back from the war, I knew exactly where it was. And so what we did, my two sisters and I, we shared the jewelry between the 3 of us. So anyway, so here we are at the school, and they take all the information, and then they put us on oxen-driven wagons, okay? Now, they're taking us to the next town, which is 20 kilometers away, all right? And the oxen, they don't go very fast. You probably know it's like a cow, right? They go very slow. I could have walked it faster, okay? So it's 20 kilometers, and I don't know how many hours it took us to get there. I really don't remember, but I know it took many, many hours. So finally we get there, and they put us at a train station. There was no housing for us. They put up some make-believe tents, okay? Now remember, this is April 1904, probably 25 degrees, maybe 30 degrees, okay? So of course we all went in our warm clothes, in our wool coats and, heavy socks and all that stuff. So, and we, I think, actually even somehow were able to take some quilts with us. Goose down quilts. I don't know if any of your parents have goose down quilts. It's a very expensive item to buy today. Maybe Nordstrom's would have it. And that's what we used at home. We had the geese, we had the goose down quilt. That's what we used. We didn't have blankets in those days. We didn't have mattresses either. You know what they used for mattresses? They would put straw in burlap bags, and that's what we used for mattresses, okay? Anyway, so here we are, and so this place, the train station, and what they did, they brought from all the small villages around Uzhhorod, which, the city has over 20,000 people, and the villages would have maybe 300, 500 people, 600, small villages, and all the villages were coming to this part of Ungvar, okay, from that part of the world. They told them to come over to Ungvar, and they put us there. And also at Munkac, they did the same thing, but they had a lot of villages around their towns. Just like here, 100 years ago, I'm sure we had a lot of villages, right? Like even this town here. I don't even know if it was in existence in those days, okay? Maybe a teacher knows. Anyway, so they put us in this tents, okay? And they must have put several families in there. There was nothing but the tents, and that's it. So they must have put 3, 4, 5 families in each one. We were very pushed together like sardines, actually, So here we are, and I don't remember what they did about food. That's one thing I don't remember. I remember how it looked and how it was, but we probably took food with us for a couple of days. But how much food can you take when you have 10 people in a family, right? There's no cooking. You cannot cook over there or do anything. So we probably had to get food from the people over there, whoever was keeping us in this holding place. So here we are, and little by little, a lot of people are leaving, okay? And I don't remember how many days, or maybe a couple, we were in this holding place, okay? The trains were there every day taking people. So finally it came our turn to be taken away, and they put us in cattle cars. There were no seats in the train, no water, nothing. Just a cattle car. They must have squeezed in 80 to 100 people in each cattle car. They locked the door, and off we went. We're going and going and going. We have no food with us. We have no water with us. And people are passing out. And we had people of all ages, from infants to old people, sick people, everything, complete families. So, and people are passing out, and I don't know if anybody may have even died in the train, because the train was probably going for a couple of days. And if you are there for a couple of days and you have, sick people, so I really don't know how many people. We were not able to walk around in the train. It was so crowded, okay? All things were happening. Finally, the train slows down, and the train stops, and the door opens, and a man in a striped uniform comes on the train. He came to help us with our luggage, okay? Because we all came with one bag. We were entitled to take one bag with us. So, and he's walking around, and he's looking around to see what kids could pass for an older age. Because remember, they didn't bring us there to have a good time. They brought us there for slave labor. Of course, we didn't know it at that time, but that's what it was. So he comes to me, this young man in a striped uniform, shaven head, okay? And you know that all the work was done by the Jews in the camps. All the work, from the beginning to the end. And if you wouldn't do it, they'll kill you, all right? And maybe those people that worked in the gas chambers, maybe they would give them an extra slice of bread for doing what they're doing, okay? So anyway, so this gentleman comes to me, and he says to me, how old are you? I said, I'm 14. He says, tell him you're 18. I didn't ask him any questions. And then my sister Helen was holding my 10-year-old sister's hand, and he says, is this your child? She says, no, that's my sister. My sister Helen was 21 at that time. And my sister Judy was probably 18, and my brother was like 17, and then I was next. Anyway, so we get off the train, and he was telling all these younger kids to tell them they're 3-4 years older, okay? And let me tell you, a lot of kids survived that way, a lot of kids, okay? And also he was telling us, if they ask you what profession you have, you tell them you're a tailor, you're a shoemaker, you're a cabinet maker, you're a painter or bricklayer, because they did not bring us there to have a good time. They brought us there for slave labor. So we get off the train, and 5 in a row, and we're marching for maybe 3-4 minutes. A lot of selections were done right there at the train stations. So my father and my brother is told to go to this line, my mother and 3 sisters and brothers to another line, and my 2 sisters to a different line. And he comes to me, he says, how old are you? I said, I am 18. But my sister Helen said, oh no, she's only 14. She had no idea that this man was talking to me. Maybe he didn't even go, maybe, I don't know if he did go to her, what he told her, okay? I said, no, I'm 18. And he let me go with my 2 older sisters. Otherwise, I would have gone with my mother and 3 sisters and brothers straight into the gas chamber. I never saw my mother's and 3 sisters and brother again. So, we were very naive. We didn't know too much what was going on in the world, even though maybe some people in Europe knew what Hitler was doing. This started in 1939, okay? Killing people in, like 7 years before we actually got there, 6 years. So here we are, standing in line, and finally they march us into a bathroom, which is a room probably, I would say, 3 times the size, but 1 level, okay? And there was a man in the SS soldier in the corner taking tape, filming us, okay? And they told us to take our clothes off. So we took all our clothes off and put it on a pile, and then they shaved all our hair, not only the head, but everywhere else too, okay? And then they told us to pick up a dress from another pile. They did not give us our own clothes back. I understand that a lot of the clothes that we brought to Europe went to Germany. Because, when you travel, you don't take rags with you. You travel your best clothes, right? That's what you take. And that's what I heard about that, okay? So anyway, so here we are. All of a sudden, we get down, and we're waiting for further orders, okay, standing in line waiting for further orders. And they march us into this building. And as I said before, I think, I tell you, at my age, I sometimes forget a little bit what I'm saying. So sometimes I repeat it, so you'll have to forgive me if I repeat something, okay? So here we are. They bring us into this building.
What did they give you to wear?
1 dress.
You took your clothes, so tell us about...
Yeah, I got 1 dress when it was down to the floor and wooden clogs. And believe me, this dress was nothing but a piece of junky dress, okay? No underwear, no nothing, just a dress, okay? So after we are done with all that, the S's were taking movies of us while we were naked, and while they were shaving our hair, okay? Then we go outside and we wait for further orders, okay? And by the way, that's my son Steve over there, who just asked. We were waiting for further orders, and it's getting pretty cold because this is April of 1944. And what I did, I tore a piece of the bottom of the dress off and put it on my head because, when they shave your head in the winter, your head can get very cold. Can you imagine shaving your head off? And remember, I experienced that. It's very cold if you don't have hair on your head. It keeps your head warm. So we're waiting for further orders, and while we're waiting out there, there was a Polish guard with a dog and a rifle standing, and I don't know what he was doing there, but he was standing next to my sister Judy, okay? And we see a fire behind the building. There's a fire, and there's smoke. You see the smoke, and you hear children crying, and you hear children calling names for their mother or whatever. And so my sister said to this guard, "What is that noise in back of the building?" He said they were burning hair. So she said, "Well, burning hair wouldn't make this kind of noise." Then he said they were burning cripples. She didn't ask any more questions, okay? And after we got in the living quarters, we found out what was going on. They didn't even give the people enough gas to kill them all the way. They pushed them out the back door and burned them half alive, okay? So we knew what happened to my mother and 3 sisters and brothers. So here we are, finally we get into our living quarters. It's a barrack, wooden barrack, and there's 30 barracks. One barrack is a kitchen and one barrack is a bathroom. And each barrack has bunks, 3 rows of bunk beds, okay? Each bunk held 1,000 women. This is all women's, okay? So we get in there, and my 2 sisters and I and many other, maybe 4 or 5 other women, we ended up on the top bunk, okay? And we go to sleep. We get up next morning. And we have no heat in the bunk. There is a fireplace, would you believe it? I don't know if anybody was ever in Auschwitz. Was anybody ever in Auschwitz? Okay. Do you remember how the bunks were? They had a big, like a brick fireplace, and it had chimneys, but they never put fire on. They never turned it on, okay? This was supposed to keep us warm, but we had no heat in there. You know what we used, the brick place? It was like long, probably about this long, and double the size. We would just sit on there because that's the only place we had sit, to gossip, I guess, so between us. So anyway, so we get in there, and so we landed up, and there's 1,000 women in every barrack, okay? 3 rows of bunks. I don't know how many of you saw Schindler's List. I'm sure some of you saw it, right? So my 2 sisters and I and a few other women, we ended up on top of the barrack, on top of the bed, okay, the bunk. So we go to bed, we get up the next morning. We have no blankets, nothing, just wood, nothing. We go to bed. We kept each other's bodies warm because there must have been at least 10, 12 women in each area. We get up, and they're serving us black coffee for breakfast. They're not serving it to us. It's in a pot, 6 or 8 quart pot. You take a sip. And that coffee was nothing but black soot. I don't think anybody could even swallow anything. They took a sip, and I'm sure a lot of people threw up from that. So I told my 2 sisters, I'm going outside. I want to see what's going on. So I go outside, and I see all these women walking like zombies. Dead bodies in the area, dead bodies on the electric wires. We have a 12-foot electric wire separating. There were 3 camps there, the Czech camp, the Hungarian camp, and the Gypsy camp. They did the same thing to the Gypsies, okay? So we were in the Hungarian camp. 12-foot electric wire separating us, okay? There's dead bodies by the electric fences. Some people still had their hands on there. So many people committed suicide that way because it was the fastest way to die. You touch the electric wire, 20 seconds later, you're gone. You see blood coming out of the nose, you're gone. Every day, they were picking up dead bodies on by the electric wire and on the street. Those big wheelbarrows, okay? That's what they used. So here we are, so we ended up in Barrack 26, okay? So anyway, so we, as I said, we went to sleep and then get up. I go and I said, I'm going out, and I'm walking, and I see people like zombies. You can't even explain how horrible it looked. Absolutely unexplainable what it looked like, okay? You think it looked like hell? It was like a lot worse than hell. I don't know what the next thing is for hell. And as I'm walking, somebody's calling my name. Roisy, Roisy. Oh my God, I said, I know I'm popular. I didn't know I was that popular that somebody should ask me, call my name in this God-forsaken place. It was my father. My father and my brother were already selected to go to a factory to work. My father always wore a beautiful suit and a hat and glasses, well dressed. He was a tailor, my father, okay? He had a shop in the town. And this man is wearing striped uniforms and shaven and everything. You know, when you're used to seeing somebody a certain way, you have to take a couple of looks before you can recognize him, okay? He says, don't you recognize me? I'm your father. So we hugged and we kissed, and he said, the first thing he said to me, where's your mother? I said, I don't know. And at that time, I really didn't know. We found this out probably a couple of days after we were in Auschwitz, what they were doing over there. So I told him I'm here with my two sisters, and my father told me he's here with my brother, and they were already selected to go to a factory to work, okay? We talked, and he said, whatever you do, stay together because you have a much better chance of survival. And then he said, whatever you do, stay alive so you can tell the world what they're doing to us. So I said goodbye to my father, and we made up to meet the next morning again. And I brought my two sisters, and my father brought my brother, and he repeated the same thing. Whatever you do, stay alive so you can tell the world what they're doing to us. So we said goodbye, and we never saw my father and brother again. So here we are in Auschwitz, Birkenau. Lunchtime, they give us a piece of bread with a piece of margarine, and at night, they give us soup. So how are they going to give us the soup? The same way they give us the coffee in a pot. For 10, 12 people, they give us a pot, and we take a sip. And the soup is nothing but rice and cabbage and maybe some potatoes. You're lucky if you get a potato, okay? We would share a pot, maybe a dozen of us. So, and it was not edible, let me tell you. Full of dirt on those soups. Anyway, so that's what happened during the day. So the next morning, we get up again, the next day, and then they count us every morning. We have to get up early, rain or shine, and they would count us because the reason they brought us there was for slave labor, okay? They didn't bring us here to have a good time. So they needed to know how many people are in every barrack. There were 28 barracks full of people. So when they come to the barrack, they know how many people they can get, okay? So this is going on, and after being there 5, 6, 8 days, my sister said, and as I said, they're coming to the camp, to the barracks, to select people to go to factories to work, okay? So the first week or 10 days, we didn't go because we just got there. We said we had time. Remember, there's 1,000 women in every barrack, so you're not forced to be selected to go to work. You can stay a little while. Not that it's such a pleasant place where you want to stay, okay? Anyway, so after a while, we go out and we decided we need to leave. So we go out to the front and there's a couple of SS, and sometimes they would even make us get undressed to see if we had strong enough bodies to go to a factory to work, okay? So the first 3, 4 times we did this, they put us in a different line, okay? My two sisters in one line and me in a different line. And we know already what to do because, you know, when you're in a place like this, they give you warnings. The survivors in the barrack, they tell you, if you are not together, if you are selected to go by yourself, you run out of that line. Remember, there are thousands of women in this camp walking like zombies. If you get out of the line, sometimes they don't notice you, okay? They say they need 300 women standing outside, and somebody runs out of the line. Maybe if they don't catch you, you're lucky. If they catch you, they would shoot you. So they would put me in a separate line from my two sisters, and I would run out of the line. And my two older sisters, they would also get out of the line because they're not going to leave without me, okay? And there are other people that are very happy to get into the line, okay, especially if you're going to a factory to work. So we did this 3-4 times, and after that we decided we are going to wait out the war. And hopefully we're going to,
Tell us, the line that they put you in was what line?
oh, going to Auschwitz to the gas chamber. Okay?
So one line for selection for work,
Right.
and the other line?
It's to the gas chamber. Okay? So, and when they put me in the other line, we knew already what it is, okay? Because I said the people there, they tell you, okay? So, anyway, so maybe you want to take over, Steve. I hope you do. When I'm gone, I hope you do, okay? Because we hope the second generation and other people will tell our stories, okay? So, anyway, so where was I? So of course, this is what's happening. We're going to wait out the war, and hopefully, we always used to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was sinks and holes in the ground, by the way, and we would go to the bathroom to hear gossip, news. Actually, the older people, they would always tell us the good news. The Americans are coming. The Russians are coming. We're going to liberate it soon. Just stick it out. Don't give up. Okay, that's what they were telling us, okay? So we were there in Auschwitz Birkenau, how many months, Steve? 4 months. Mostly you come, you go. Nobody stays there because it's a transitional camp. That's what it is. You come, they select you, go to work and leave, okay? So we stayed all these months over there, and in the beginning, I was very sick. I had diarrhea for about 4 weeks. And I couldn't even stand on my own feet. When the Germans would come to count us, they would count us every day, rain or shine. My 2 sisters had to hold me. So I could, stand for a second, and then, of course, as soon as the SS would walk by, I would be on my, could stand. So anyway, as the time goes by, and the food was so awful, nobody could live on that food, by the way. Nobody could really enjoy anything of that, okay? But finally, when you're there 3-4 months, you eat whatever you can get, whether it's rotten or not. Where you find a half a slice of bread that's all green, you'll eat it, or a half a rotten potato. I would go behind the kitchen where they would throw stuff out, not that they threw food out, they would throw out maybe something that was rotten completely, and I would go and find some things that, and I would bring it back to our barrack, okay, and I would share it with my sisters, okay? Because the food they gave you was, you cannot live on anything like that. First of all, a lot of people couldn't eat it, and the other was, what they gave one person was not even good for nothing, okay? Anyway, so as I said, it's going on for 4 months, and finally, after being there so many months, I got used to all the junk food that we gave us and all the crap I would find on the street to eat, or, many times there were dead bodies on the street, and we would go through their clothes to see if there's a piece of bread in there that we could find from the dead bodies. They would pick up dead bodies every day in those big wheelbarrow things. Every day they would come and pick up dead bodies by the electric wires and on the walking area. So finally, this is already 4 months later, and they're coming to our barrack. They need 300 women. And by that time, we were all fine. It's funny how you get used to living in such horrible conditions. Your body can take an awful lot. It's unbelievable how much a human body can take. So they're coming to our barrack. They need 300 women to go to Freudenthal in Germany. So being there 4 months, I said to my sisters, we need to get out of this place. Okay, this is already probably, I would say, September, October, right? 1944. See if I can steal myself into this transport. So I told my 2 sisters, you go out front, get selected, and keep a place in line for me. Always 5 in a row, okay? And as this is going on, of course, every barrack has leaders, people that are giving out the food, okay? You have to take 1,000 women. You can't just be there and not have somebody in charge. So, and we had, on the barrack, we had a door in the front and a door in the back. And as I'm watching how am I going to get out of this place, one of the leaders in our barrack goes to the back door, and the door was, a woman was sitting there and guarding the back door, because you're not supposed to go out through the back. She lets this woman out, and I quickly chase to the back of the barrack, and I'm there, and she says, where are you going? You're supposed to go through the front to get selected to work. I said, I don't want to go to the front and get selected to work. I said, my mother walked out, I want to go with her. Now, how that came to my brain, I don't know. She let me out. My two sisters held a place for me in line. That is how I got out of Auschwitz Birkenau. Okay? So this, as I said, the fall of 1944. So, of course, we are all filthy dirty. Remember, this is a transitional camp. No changing of the dress. We have the same dress. No showers, no cleaning whatsoever. What happens after 4 months when you're in a place like this and you don't shower and nothing? Full of lice. Our bodies were full of lice, okay? We couldn't sleep at night from the bites of the lice. Some women that were in camps still had marks on their bodies from the lice biting them. Anyway, they've got to they're not going to send us anywhere in this condition, right? The rags on our bodies, that one dress, which is, you know, I took my dress off once or twice to wash it, but there was no soap. There was nothing. Remember, we don't have anything. All we have is a dress and the clogs. There's no soap, no towels, nothing. No hygiene whatsoever, okay? So of course, they're not going to send us anywhere there, so they send us to the bathroom, the same bathroom that when we came in. They shaved our hair again. After being there 4 months, you probably have an inch of hair, okay? And disinfected our bodies, gave us decent clothes, underwear and shoes and socks. Like, you know, we should be like human beings, because if they're going to send us to some factory, they're not, you know, they got to make sure we're, you know, recognized and that we are human beings. So here we are, and then after we get our clothes, they did not give us uniforms. We wore regular clothes. But each one of us had a little label on our dress with a number. And I have a number on my arm here. If anybody wants to see it later, it's a tattoo, okay? This was from Auschwitz Birkenau, but they didn't tattoo us that day. They tattooed us once we came to the factory in Germany. So I said they took our names and everything, information, and they put us on trucks. I believe it was on trucks. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember the train, so it must have been on trucks. They didn't make us walk, I don't know how many hundreds of miles. So it took us a couple of days probably to get where we're going. Finally, we get to Freudenthal in Germany, okay? We had 2 buildings, 2-story high, and we had, it's like a different world for us now, okay? Mattresses, blankets, we get canteens. We never had a canteen before. We have a spoon and a fork, and we have decent clothes. Once a week we take a bath or a shower. I'm really not sure which one we did, because they didn't have showers years and years ago in Europe. So maybe they did in Germany. So anyway, so we were. It's like a different world for us now. Okay, they're treating us like human beings. So we go to bed. The next morning we get up, and they're giving us a speech. If anybody doesn't do decent work, they're going to send us back to Auschwitz, okay? They're like warning us, okay? So, and this place where we are in is also surrounded by electric wires, okay? I don't know why they did it, because nobody would try to run away, because if anybody we see women in Germany with shaven heads, they know they're survivors, and they would give you up to the SS. So there was no chance of surviving if you run away. So anyway, so I was assigned in the factory to work on gas masks. My sister Helen and Judy, one of them was working on uniforms and one on guns, okay? And I had to work sit on a high chair. You know, when I was working on the gas mask, I needed to bend down, pick one up, look inside, and put it here. 12 hours a day at least. And after doing that for 10 days, you know, I said to one of the leaders in the factory, I said, you know, this is hard work. I should get an extra meal. Sure, you could have an extra meal. So she would give me an extra meal every lunchtime, and I would take it to our living quarters, and I would share it with my sisters. But I mean, it was like a different world completely. You cannot compare it to anything, okay? Then, 5 minutes? Thank you, honey.
You can talk more about liberation when we go to the other room.
Okay. So anyway, so here we are in this place, and of course, and finally comes May 8th, and we were used to be, they walked us to the factory every day. They would come to the area, to our place, a couple of SS soldiers, and they would march us to the factory, which was 5-minute walk from where we were living, okay? So we're going, and they're always preaching to us. If we don't do a good job, they're going to send us back to Auschwitz. And we know what the answer is to Auschwitz, okay? The gas chambers. So here comes May 8th. We're waiting to be picked up to go to work, and nobody's coming to pick us up. And we're not supposed to leave the building. But, I don't always agree with everything they tell me, And that's how I survive, by not giving in and not giving up, okay? When you're in trouble, don't ever give in. Remember, there's another chance, also hope. So if you're in trouble, remember tomorrow is going to be better, okay? So I said, I'm going out, I don't care. I go outside of the building, and I see the gate is wide open. All the Germans ran away. And I'm screaming up to the building. I don't know if anybody heard me, that the Germans are gone, the gate is open, and I hear shooting, and I hear the Russian language. And there's some planes going all over us there, over the building. And so, of course, here I am. I'm ready to go and meet the Russians, okay? Because I know Russian. But where we lived in my hometown, the general public, they were Ukrainian people, and they speak Russian. So we could speak Russian, and we spoke, of course, Hungarian, and we spoke Czech, and we also spoke Yiddish, which is Jewish. That's how we spoke at home. So of course, I figured if I go in regular clothes in front of the Russians, they would probably shoot me, because they would think I'm a German. Of course, this is already 8 months or long after they shaved our hair, and my hair was maybe 2 inches long or maybe 4 inches long. So I figured I better find a rag and a stick and go in front of the Russians like this. Because if I would go in front of the Russians, they might shoot me. So I found a rag and a stick, and I ran out, and in back of the building where we were living, they had cornfields. You know how corn grows, right? Very tall. And that's where the Russians were coming, through the cornfields. And I went like this, and I met the Russians. They hugged me and kissed me, and I told them who we were. They came and liberated us. The Russians were very good to us. Anything we needed, all you have to do is ask them. So, and actually, they would bring us food, and if we need clothing, they told us we could go into town and get some clothing. So, and in this town, Freudenthal, the people that were in town were the mothers with the little kids, because they would take all their boys 15 years and older in Germany to the military. I think they were 15. So the Russian comes to the building the next day, and he says to me, do you want to go to town? I said, yes, I want to go to town. I'll go anywhere, I'm always ready for everything, and that's what saved me. I'm ready for good and bad, because if you're not ready for things like this, you cannot handle it. So I said, but this guy was a big guy, 6 feet in a uniform and good looking and everything. I was only 15 and a half, but still, you notice these things. So I said, can I bring a friend with me? Okay, so I brought a friend with me, and this Russian is standing, and me, I'm 5 feet, and she is not much taller than me, and we're going to town, and I felt like I was reborn that day. I really mean it. It was like, I am free. I can go where I want. I can do what I want. Nobody has to tell me what I can and cannot do. It's like a whole new life started for me. You know what I mean? So he took us to town, and then we went into some German homes, the Russian. They were all open, those homes. We went inside, and we took some food, and we took some clothing, what we needed. We couldn't take too much. How much can you carry, right? Here we have one dress, one pair of underwear, one pair of shoes, and okay, so anyway, so we got back home, and of course we got a lot of food because the Russians brought us food, and we got extra food in town, and we overate. After 2 weeks, a lot of us got sick. Didn't take 2 weeks to get sick. If you eat too much, you get sick. So finally, we'd been there 2 weeks, and we decided we need to go home. Okay.
And so Rose, why don't we do this? Because we're at 1:20 when we're supposed to give up the room, but
Okay.
why don't you just get back to where you are?
Okay, so we're
And then for liberation and
we go over
the
there.
other
Okay,
room.
so we go home, we go to the train station, and all of Europe, the train stations are so busy, all the survivors, and it's the end of the war, the soldiers, they're all going home. We had to wait 3 days at the train station to get on the train. When we got on the train, it was on top of the train, okay? So while we were waiting at the train, my 2 sisters and I, Helen, my older sister Helen, she was almost 22 at that time, she met a young Jewish Czech soldier at the train station, and they fell in love. He was a good-looking young man. I think all the girls fell in love with him. There were all kinds of people at the train station, okay? We spent 3 days at the train station before we could get on a train, or maybe more, okay? So we told them we are going back home because we are hoping my father and my brother survived, okay? So we said we're going home, and so before we left on the train and before he left to report to his group, he gave us his key to his house, and he said, you go home, see who survived, then you come and live in Prague with me. So that was supposed to be what's happening. So this happened, we went home. Finally, it took us over a month to get home because we had to go through all of Europe. And all of a sudden, the whole world is kind to us and helping us. Where was the world when we needed them? Where was the world when this was going on? Nobody tried to help us. Thousands and thousands of people were gassed every day and killed. I still can't believe that the world was so silent. So anyway, so of course it took us a long time to get home. Finally we got home, and our house was not livable. So, but there's other survivors coming home, a couple here, a couple there, and they got their homes back. My home was not livable. The Germans had their horses in our house. And of course we went and got our jewelry. We went to the house, and I knew exactly where it was. And then we never went back to that house anymore. But we did go to our neighbors, and because we did not know for sure if we are all going to Prague or not, because if my father and my brother would come home, maybe my father would, he was a tailor and he had a shop in town, maybe he would start the business again, you know, gone 1 year. But my sister Helen probably was going to go for Prague. So we went to our neighbors and we asked them for our furnishings, because we left 3 rooms of furnishings, okay? And you know what they told us? If you want to live, you better leave. Otherwise, we're going to finish Hitler's job. Those were neighbors who made a living from the Jews in our town, who were our friends, went to school together. This is what they told us. Because once you get somebody's property, they don't want to give it up, okay? So we knew we had no future over there. And finally, we found out my father, as people were coming back little by little, all young people, no parents came back from the war, no grandparents, no sick people, okay? So we found out that somebody was with my father in a camp, and he got sick, and they sent him back to the gas chamber. They killed him, okay? And my brother, he was in a place, in a factory with 300 men, also a young man came back, and he said they were, a few days before the war ended, they took out 300 men in that camp. They took the whole camp into the forest, made them dig a big hole, and they killed everybody. So I said, how did you survive? He said, I was too sick to leave the barrack. He couldn't get out of his bunk. He survived, and all the others were killed. Europe has a lot of holes full of dead bodies, because a lot of this was going on. Before they even had the concentration camps, they would take little villages and make them dig a big hole and kill everybody. So anyway,